Hello there. I'm Cheri Feuerbacher, and this is Cindy Bass. We are your chair and co-chair of the Forms and Contracts Committee here at MetroTex. And we thought it was time to bring to you some of the major contract changes that we've just gone through. As a matter of fact, I believe those were put out in November of this year, Cindy, and became mandatory February 1st. So it's time to go through some of these, right?
And hopefully you're using those already as well. So
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely. And we know what constitutes changes on our contracts, don't we? I mean, basically,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's lawsuits.
Lawsuits, exactly. And helping the consumer understand what is supposed to be helping them. They have to make sure that we as realtors understand what's going on. And so, and also, what else, Cheri? The legislators, right?
Yes.
Which are in session right now. They see that we may need to do something differently, so they pass those new laws, and TREC has to abide by what those are.
Yes.
And make those changes that need to, because they're changing it on the Texas property code side. And so our contracts have to mirror what those look like. And so that's why some of these changes have been made.
Absolutely. And for the most part, we think these are very good changes, and the main thing is that you understand them, and so that you can explain them to the consumer when, especially on some of these that have some specifics that we want to go over. So let's go ahead and get started on some of those. Let's go ahead and jump to page 1, paragraph 3A. And this is what we know as realtors as the cash portion of the sales price. So the main change on that was, let's just read clearly, if you don't mind, Cindy, if you have that there. What was the change on that?
So the change states that the term cash portion of the sales price does not include proceeds from borrowing of any kind or selling other real property except as described in this contract.
And so we talked about that a little bit when we were going over some of the material. Now, is that pertaining to down payment assistance?
No, it doesn't, because that is not something that is borrowed, in a way. It is borrowed, but it's not, in the contract, because that comes part of the financing part on the third party financing addendum.
Right.
So we don't have to.
Now, don't go looking for it on the third-party financing addendum, but that is handled through the financing, through the lender, who is known as the third party. So all of that gets lumped together in that.
Right.
Another question that had come up was, what if I'm borrowing money from a 401k? And that was something we wanted to make sure we addressed. And don't worry about that. It's a great question. So if some of you had it as well, but 401k does not count as a loan. It actually is your money. Now that you may be borrowing it from your 401k program, but you're borrowing against yourself. So that is not even considered a loan. Payments aren't even considered when the lender is qualifying you. So that doesn't come into play there.
Right. And I think what we also need to understand and get our clients to understand, Cheri, is that the money needs to be in an account.
Yes.
And seasoned. And that's what they're trying to get us to understand here. Is that, it does have to be seasoned. So, and some of us have those buyers who like to keep their money under their mattress, but they need to get that deposited in a timely manner so that when that lender goes and looks at it, it has had time to be seasoned, is what they say.
Absolutely. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So let's get to the second one, page 4, paragraph 6E11, and that's under required notices. And we have out here mud, PID, etc. And so you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, Cheri. So these came about, if you remember, down under the notices section, which is actually it's agreements. I'm sorry about that, but the agreement section.
Paragraph 22.
Paragraph 22, exactly. We have where the PID, the addendum for the PID notice is under there. However, we know, according to our contract, if a seller is located in a mud district or a water conservation improvement district, that seller has to let the buyers know, because there are fees associated with that, and the buyer needs to understand what those fees are before they purchase the home. And
it's really important too that you get those right up front before you make the offer.
Yes.
Because some of those fees can be such that it might prohibit
A buyer
from qualifying. So, and they deserve to know what those numbers are.
Yeah, so listing agents, just a note, get those notices ahead of time and stick them in that transaction desk so buyer's agents have those notices ahead of time.
Absolutely. So here's another one, page 5, paragraph 7F, completion of repairs. I've seen this going in some of the blogs and the online chats. Transfer warranties, docs, etc. Do you want to go into that one for us?
So definitely. So the completion of repairs, we are requiring the sellers to provide those warranties to the buyer at the time those repairs are completed. And so it states in there, if you read that, seller shall, which means right now, provide buyer with copies of documentation from the repair persons showing the scope of the work and that payment for the work was completed. And at the seller's expense, arrange for transfers.
That is what is kicking out right now in some of those chat rooms is sellers acting surprised. And I say acting, they are acting surprised because they are, but listing agents should be advising them that they are charged with the expense of transferring those warranties. We don't want our clients surprised, no matter what side we're on.
Exactly.
But they are required to pay for those transfers. Page 5, paragraph 7H, residential service contract. You want to go over what we have there?
So that one is talking about our home warranty companies, and they used to be licensed and governed by the Texas Real Estate Commission, just as we are. However, that did move with legislation, the last legislation, and they are now governed and licensed by the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulations. So buyer's agents, when you have the buyers that want to have that home warranty, make sure they are licensed with the Department of Licensing and Regulations. And so that's all that states.
Absolutely. Page 6, paragraph 11. It's actually hard to say it out loud. Special provisions. Here are my notes. No. Just no. My personal opinion is don't put anything in the paragraph unless you speak to your broker in advance. It's practicing law. Use your forms. I'd be real surprised if you didn't find a form for that particular item.
Exactly.
But do you want to go over what the change actually was?
So that is a big change. So I'm actually going to read it because they've taken some verbiage out and they've added some new, and you'll see that in just a few minutes, but let me read it. It says this paragraph is intended to be used only for additional items. An informational item is a statement that completes a blank in a contract form, discloses factual information, or provides instructions. Real estate brokers and sales agents are prohibited from practicing law and shall not add to, delete, or modify any provision of this contract unless drafted by a party to this contract or a party's attorney. Are we a party as a realtor?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
Well, absolutely not. There you have it. We talked about when we got into the real estate business over 2 decades ago, special provisions was actually blank for half a page. And there were many things we were writing in, and as time went on, things such as the forms and contracts committees and legislation got involved, and the contracts were amended to include items that became common practice in our field, and the paragraph became smaller and smaller and smaller. And there's a reason for that. We have forms or other paragraphs already referencing what you're thinking about putting in, or you shouldn't put it in there because you'd be practicing law anyway. So that's just a broker's opinion, another broker's opinion.
Right.
Okay, let's jump to page 7, paragraph 13, prorations, including rents, maintenance, things of that nature.
Yes, so definitely we have to remember that the seller has to make sure they're given the money. That is prorated out. It kind of goes back to our transfer fees too when we're talking about prorations. So but we have to let the sellers understand that they do have to give that information and those funds to the buyer, and they are prorated out. And if anything should change, again, from the time that those prorations were done to the actual and final statements, that the seller may owe additional funds to the buyer.
Right.
So just understand what that means. And it included the rents and regular periodic maintenance. So that was added.
Yes. Okay. Last but not least, page 8, paragraph 21, notices. Love this one.
We do.
We've spent years having to put CC and the agent's email address. Now it actually states with a copy. That's for you.
That's right. Because so many over the years, we have known agents trying to put their own names there. And that's not what it says on that paragraph. It says parties to the transaction, buyer, seller. So don't do that, agents. You have a special line now that says CC to agent. So we're glad about that change.
Absolutely, absolutely. And these aren't all the changes that happened. It was not just to the 1 to 4 contract, right?
Correct.
The commercial contract had some changes to it.
Yes.
Addenda throughout.
Yes. Our amendment was
Yes.
changed a little bit too.
Yes.
But we don't have enough time to hit all of those, do we, Cheri?
We don't, but I tell you what, MetroTex has a phenomenal lineup of classes, courses that are updated. If you go to a contracts course here at MetroTex, you will be taught through the newest and coolest revised forms that are out there for us to use in the industry. So we highly recommend you do that. Go on the calendar and see what's out there. More education is always best.
Always.
Know your forms, use them, and by the way, we would be wrong if we didn't say, and get involved.
Exactly, get involved. You know, Cheri, there's one more thing we forgot to point out.
Please.
And that is, how do we know if we're using the right form?
Yes.
You know, that's very important. So if you look in the top right-hand corner, we actually did put it up here for you guys to see in the top right-hand corner. That's where you see the latest and greatest dates of when that contract has been changed. Now, what confuses people is that's when the contract was changed, but our mandatory use wasn't until February 1st
Right.
of 2023. So they're going, how do I know? But that will always be the telltale, top right-hand corner. And then at the bottom right-hand corner, it has the form numbers, Trex form numbers. So those do change as well.
Yes.
So
keep a look on that. And again, if you have questions, give us a holler.
that's right.
It was great. Thank you for tuning in,
Yes.
and we hope to see you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.